I'm Robert, I'm 28, and a week before Christmas. I overheard my own family planning to publicly destroy my career and humiliate me in front of everyone they knew. Before I tell you about the phone call that changed everything, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. The phone buzzed against the cold wooden table, a furious, insistent vibration in the quiet of the cabin. The screen lit up with one word, Mom. Outside, gentle snow was falling, each flake a tiny speck of peace in the vast, silent woods. Inside my chest, a storm was raging. I let it ring a few more times, just watching her name flash on the screen. Then, I took a deep breath and swiped to answer. Robert, where are you? Her voice was tight, stretched thin like a wire about to snap. There was no hello, no Merry Christmas Eve, just accusation. I leaned back in my chair, a small, humorless laugh escaping my lips. Wouldn't you like to know? Don't play games with me. The caterers are here, the guests are arriving. What am I supposed to tell people? I don't know, Mom, I said, my voice dangerously calm. Maybe tell them the truth for once? But listen, don't wait up for me. And definitely don't hold my seat at the table. I hung up before she could reply, the silence of the cabin rushing back in. It was a silence I had chosen, a peace I had fought for. But just 1 week ago, my world had been anything but peaceful. It had started a week before Christmas. I'd driven 6 hours to my parents' house in Connecticut, my truck loaded with gifts I had spent the last 3 months pouring my soul into. I'm a woodworker, a furniture designer. To my family, the prestigious Vance family, that's a polite way of saying I'm the black sheep, the disappointment. I arrived a day earlier than planned, hoping for a quiet evening before the holiday chaos descended. I let myself in with my old key and found the house strangely quiet. I called out, but no one answered. Figuring they were out, I headed upstairs, but I stopped dead on the landing. Muffled voices were coming from my father's study. My mother's sharp tone, my father's rumbling bass, my brother Leo's confident cadence, and my sister Clara's cutting remarks. And then I heard my name. Curiosity turned to a cold dread. I crept closer, my feet silent on the thick Persian runner. I stood just outside the heavy oak door, left slightly ajar, and I listened. What I heard broke something inside me. It wasn't just criticism. It was a calculated plot. A full-blown character assassination scheduled for Christmas dinner, with me as the guest of honor and the main course. To understand why their words cut so deep, you have to understand my family. The Vance name means something in our town. It means old money, sharp suits, and Ivy League degrees that lead to corner offices. My father, Richard Vance, is a titan of investment banking. He built his empire from the ground up and believes that a man's worth is measured by his tax bracket. My mother, Eleanor, comes from a family whose name is etched onto library wings and hospital donor plaques. Her world is one of charity galas, social standing, and appearances. Above all else, appearances. And then there was me, the boy who never wanted a stock portfolio, only a block of wood and a set of chisels. My earliest memories are of the smell of sawdust in my grandfather's workshop. He wasn't a Vance. He was my mother's father, a quiet man who believed you could learn more from the grain of a piece of oak than from any textbook. While my older brother, Leo, was celebrated for his straight A's and his debate team trophies, I was in the garage, covered in wood shavings, trying to make 2 pieces of wood fit together perfectly. I remember being 8 years old and spending a whole weekend building a small, wobbly bookshelf for my mother. I sanded it until my fingers were raw and stained it a deep cherry red. I presented it to her, my heart pounding with pride. She looked at it, a tight, polite smile on her face. Oh, Robert, that's rustic. She placed it in the laundry room behind a stack of towels. A week later, it was gone. My father was more direct. He called my workshop the mess in the garage. He'd walk in, dressed in a crisp Tom Ford suit after a long day at the office, and wrinkle his nose. Still playing with your blocks, son? Leo just got an early acceptance to Yale. When are you going to get serious about your future? Serious was the family code word for profitable. Art wasn't serious. Craftsmanship was a hobby. My passion was an inconvenience. A smudge on the perfect family portrait they were so desperate to paint. My sister Clara, already dreaming of a law career, once told her friends my ambition was to get a splinter. They all laughed. I was 10. Leo was the golden boy, the heir apparent. He was everything I wasn't. Ambitious, ruthless in a way our father admired, and effortlessly charming. He followed the path laid out for him without question, and the family rewarded him for it. His trophies were displayed in the living room. My projects were tolerated in the garage. He was an investment. I was a liability. This wasn't malicious, not in the way you see in movies. It was worse. It was a quiet, constant, soul-crushing dismissal. The underlying message was always the same. You are not enough. Your passions are worthless. You need to change to be one of us. For years I tried. I really did. I tried to care about the stock market. I took business classes in high school, but it felt like wearing a suit that was 3 sizes too small. I was suffocating. The only place I could breathe was in my workshop, the scent of cedar and pine filling my lungs. That was my church. That was my home. So when it came time for college, I knew I had a choice to make. It wasn't just about picking a major. It was about picking a life. My life or the one they had designed for me. I think deep down they always knew I'd pick the wood over the Wall Street Journal. And I think they never, ever forgave me for it. The day I told my father I was applying to the Rhode Island School of Design is a day I've replayed in my mind 1,000 times. We were in his study, the same room where years later I would stand outside, listening to them plot my downfall. The room was wall-to-wall mahogany, filled with the smell of old leather and his expensive cologne. It was his throne room. I had the acceptance letter in my trembling hand. It felt like a golden ticket and a death warrant all at once. Leo was already at Yale, his future a bright, unwavering line. My path was a dirt road disappearing into a forest. RSD? My father asked, his voice dangerously low. He didn't look up from the document he was reading. What is that? A culinary school? It's one of the best art and design schools in the country, Dad, I said, my voice barely a whisper. For furniture design. He finally looked up, and his eyes were like chips of ice. Furniture. You're throwing away your life to make chairs. It's more than that. It's about design, about creating. It's about being a carpenter, Robert, he boomed, slamming his hand on the desk. I didn't build this empire so my son could be a carpenter. We had a plan. You go to Wharton, you join Leo at the firm. You have a 6-figure salary waiting for you. A life most people would kill for, and you want to throw it away for a hobby. It's not a hobby. I finally found my voice, a surge of anger cutting through the fear. It's what I love. It's what I'm good at. It's my life, not yours. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. He leaned back in his leather chair, his face a mask of cold disappointment. Fine, he said, the word cutting the air. You want that life? You pay for it. Don't expect a single dime from me. You are on your own. That was the moment the line was drawn. It was a declaration of war. My sister, Clara, was thrilled. She made it her personal mission to remind me of my folly, forwarding me job listings for corporate positions with subject lines like, "In case you come to your senses." My mother just cried, lamenting to her friends about how she didn't know where she'd gone wrong. I went. I took out student loans that felt like a mountain, and I worked 3 jobs to make ends meet. I was a barista, a library assistant, and I cleaned the studios at night. There were nights I lived on ramen noodles and slept on a pile of sketches because I couldn't afford a proper bed. But I had never been happier. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who got it. People whose hands were also covered in paint and clay and sawdust. They didn't see my passion as a flaw. They saw it as a gift. After graduation, I started my own small business, Vance Crafted. It was a struggle. The first 2 years were brutal. Every dollar I made went right back into the business, buying better tools, renting a small workshop space. I built my reputation one piece at a time, one satisfied customer at a time. Slowly, painstakingly, it started to grow. But to my family, My hard-won independence was just further proof of my failure. They saw my small workshop, not the growing list of clients. They saw my dusty clothes, not the glowing reviews. They saw my modest income, not the priceless joy I got from creating something real and lasting with my own two hands. Which brings me back to this past Christmas. Despite everything, a stupid, stubborn part of me still craved their approval. A part of me believed that if I could just show them, really show them what I could do, they would finally understand. They would finally see me. So, for the past 3 months, I had been working on a secret project. A collection of Christmas gifts, one for each of them, designed to be so personal, so undeniably beautiful, that they would have no choice but to respect the craft. For my father, a man who lived at his desk, I designed and built a magnificent executive desk from a single slab of reclaimed walnut. It had clean, modern lines but with traditional dovetail joinery, a nod to the old-world quality he secretly admired. It was a piece of power and elegance. For my mother, who loved her garden, I crafted a delicate but sturdy potting bench from weathered teak, with custom-made brass fittings and an inlaid mosaic of river stones on the work surface. It was practical, yes, but it was also a piece of art. For Leo, I made a humidor for his collection of Cuban cigars, fashioned from rare Spanish cedar with an intricate geometric inlay on the lid. For Clara, a sleek, minimalist bookshelf in bleached ash, designed to perfectly fit a specific, awkward nook in her new apartment that she was always complaining about. Each piece was a labor of love. I poured everything I had into them, my time, my energy, and the last of my savings for the expensive materials. I worked late into the night, my hands aching, my eyes burning from the dust, fueled by this one desperate hope. This year, it will be different. This year, they will see my success. This year, they will finally be proud. I finished the final coat of oil on my father's desk the day before I left. I stood back, looking at the collection of gifts gleaming in the dim light of my workshop. They were more than just furniture. They were peace offerings. They were my heart, translated into wood and stone and brass. I smiled to myself, a genuine, hopeful smile. I imagined their faces on Christmas morning. Surprise, awe, and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of respect. That hope was the last thing I felt before I packed up my truck and drove toward the house where my family was waiting. Not with open arms, but with knives already sharpened. I was bringing them gifts made of wood, and they were planning to turn me into dead weight. And I had absolutely no idea. So there I was, standing in the upstairs hallway of my childhood home, the scent of pine and cinnamon from the Christmas decorations mocking me. The voices from the study weren't just murmurs anymore. They were clear and they were cruel. He's bringing his little wood projects again, I'm sure, my sister Clara said, her voice dripping with disdain. Probably another lopsided birdhouse for Mom. The timing is perfect. My father's voice cut in, authoritative and final. We do it at dinner, in front of everyone. Uncle Lawrence, your brother, will be there. So will the Sterlings. Once he's properly embarrassed, he'll have no choice but to accept my offer. My mother added, her voice laced with a performative sigh. It's an intervention, really. We're doing it for his own good. His business is a joke. I saw his tax returns. It's like he's running a lemonade stand. It's humiliating. It's no better than the macaroni art he used to stick on the fridge. Macaroni art. The words hit me like a physical blow. The bookshelf. The little things I'd made them for years. All of it, in their eyes, was just macaroni art. My brother Leo, the golden child, sealed the deal. I've already had a junior analyst position drawn up for him at the firm. A respectable salary. A real job. We'll announce it at dinner as the solution to his situation. It'll look like we're saving him from himself. Saving me? They were planning to corner me. Ambush me in front of our entire extended family. Dismantle my life's work with insults. And then graciously offer me a pity job at the bottom of their corporate ladder. They weren't just planning to humiliate me. They were planning to break me completely, to force me back into the mold I had fought so hard to escape. And they were going to do it on Christmas, the one day of the year that's supposed to be about love and family. Couldn't breathe. The air in the hallway felt thick and heavy, like I was drowning in it. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. I backed away from the door, my hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. Each step felt like I was walking on broken glass. I got back to the front door, my movements numb and robotic. I slipped out into the cold December air, closing the door so softly it didn't even click. I got into my truck, the beautiful handcrafted gifts still sitting in the back under a tarp, and I drove. I don't know how long I drove for. I just followed the white lines on the highway, the Christmas lights of other, happier homes blurring into streaks of color through my tear-filled eyes. Eventually, I pulled over at a deserted rest stop, the truck's engine ticking quietly in the vast silence. And then I just shattered. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. It wasn't just anger. It was a grief so profound it felt like a death. The death of hope. The death of the fantasy that one day, my family would love me for who I was, not for who they wanted me to be. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles were white, and I finally let myself scream, a raw, ragged sound torn from the deepest part of my soul. After the rage came a chilling emptiness. I pulled out my phone, my fingers fumbling. I had one person I could call. One person who had always seen me. My best friend, Alex. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey man, you make it home okay?" I opened my mouth to speak, but all that came out was a choked sob. Robert, what's wrong? Are you okay?" His voice was sharp with concern. I finally managed to get the words out, my voice cracking. "They never believed in me, Alex. They never will." And through the static of a bad connection and my own broken sobs, I told him everything. Alex listened. He didn't interrupt, didn't offer platitudes. He just let me pour out all the poison, all the years of hurt and disappointment that had come to a head in that hallway. When I was done, my voice hoarse and my energy spent, there was a moment of silence on the line. "Okay," he finally said, his voice firm and clear, cutting through my despair. "Okay, Rob. First, you are not going back there. Do you hear me? Not for Christmas, not for anything. Second, you are a damn fine artist, and your business is not a joke. It's your creation and it's real. Third, we're gonna make a plan. Plan." The word itself was an anchor in the swirling chaos of my mind. For so long, my plan had been to win their approval. Now I needed a new one. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I booked an emergency session with Dr. Sharma, a therapist I'd seen back in college. I laid out the whole ugly story for her, the history, the intervention plot, the macaroni art comment that felt like a nail in the coffin. She listened patiently, her expression calm and steady. When I finished, she didn't tell me what to do. She just asked a simple question. "Robert, if you weren't worried about their reaction, what would you want to do?" And suddenly it was clear. The anger and the grief were still there, but underneath them, something new was taking root. Cold, hard resolve. I wasn't a victim here. I was a man who had been handed a declaration of war, and I was done fighting a defensive battle. It was time to go on the offensive. With her help, the fragments of a new strategy began to click into place. It wasn't about revenge, not really. It was about taking back my own narrative. It was about reclaiming my power. We outlined it on a notepad, a 6-step plan for my own liberation. Step 1, formally withdraw. No dramatic exit, no screaming matches. A clean, simple, and non-negotiable refusal to participate in my own execution. Step 2, seize opportunity. There was an offer from a high-end art gallery in New York, a place called Isabelle Dubois Gallery. They wanted to feature a few of my pieces. I'd been hesitating, feeling like I wasn't ready. That hesitation was gone. I would call them and accept. Step 3, build my own tradition. I would call Alex and my closest friends and create our own Christmas. A family of choice celebration built on support and acceptance, not judgment. Step 4, let the work speak for itself. The gifts, I wouldn't let them rot in my truck. They were the best work I had ever done. I would have them delivered to the house on Christmas Eve, right in the middle of their party. They would be my closing statement. Step 5, establish ironclad boundaries. This wasn't a temporary protest. This was the new reality. Any future communication would be on my terms. Step 6. Reclaim my history. My childhood bedroom, which they were so eager to erase, was still filled with my things, with pieces of my past. I would get them back. Before I left Dr. Sharma's office, I did one more thing. I called my Uncle Lawrence, my father's younger brother. He'd always played the part of the cool uncle, the one who seemed to sympathize with my artistic pursuits. His name had been mentioned in the study. "Hey, Uncle Lawrence," I said, keeping my voice casual. "Just checking in before the holidays." "Robert, good to hear from you," he said, his voice oozing fake warmth. "Listen, about Christmas. Your father is a bit wound up. Don't take it personally. He just worries. He and your mother, they just want what's best for you. This whole intervention idea, it comes from a place of love, you know." And there it was. He knew. He was in on it. And he was trying to manage me, to smooth things over so I'd walk right into the trap. That was the final confirmation I needed. There were no allies in that house. I was completely and utterly on my own. And for the first time, that thought didn't scare me. It empowered me. The drive from my therapist's office was different. The world outside my windshield hadn't changed, but my world within had shifted on its axis. The fog of hurt was beginning to clear, replaced by the sharp, clean lines of purpose. I was no longer a ship lost at sea. I was a captain with a course charted. I didn't go back to my apartment. I drove to my workshop, my sanctuary. The moment I stepped inside, the familiar scent of cedar and varnish filled my lungs, and I felt my shoulders drop an inch. This was real. The solid weight of a chisel in my hand, the rough texture of unfinished pine, the hum of the lathe. This was my reality, my truth, and I would not let them take it from me. I walked over to the corner where the gifts were carefully wrapped in moving blankets. I ran a hand over the smooth surface of my father's desk. It wasn't macaroni art. It was a masterpiece. It was a testament to hundreds of hours of skill and dedication. And they were going to get it, but not as a plea for acceptance, as a final, undeniable statement of who I was. Then I picked up my phone. It was time to execute step 1. My finger hovered over my mother's name. My heart started to beat a little faster, a conditioned response from a lifetime of seeking her approval and fearing her disappointment. I took a deep breath, picturing the list we'd made. Clean, simple, non-negotiable. I pressed the call button. She answered immediately, her voice bright and phony. "Robert, darling, I was just about to call you. Your father and I have the most wonderful idea we want to discuss with you at Christmas dinner. It's a real opportunity." I cut her off. No emotion, no anger. Just a flat, calm statement of fact. "I'm calling to let you know that I won't be coming for Christmas this year." The silence on the other end was so complete I thought the call had dropped. I could picture her perfectly. Standing in the marble-floored foyer, her perfectly made-up face frozen in a mask of disbelief. "What?" she finally stammered. "What do you mean you're not coming? Don't be ridiculous. The entire family is coming. The Sterlings are flying in from Palm Beach." "My plans have changed," I said, my voice unwavering. "I have other commitments." "Other commitments?" she scoffed. "What could possibly be more important than your family at Christmas? This is unacceptable, Robert. Your father will be furious." "I'm sure he will be," I said. "This isn't up for discussion, Mom. I'm not coming. I have to go now. I'll talk to you after the holidays." And I hung up, just like that. I had never hung up on my mother in my entire life. A wave of adrenaline surged through me, followed by a profound, giddy sense of release. The first chain had been broken. I didn't give myself time to second-guess it. I immediately pulled up the number for the Isabelle Dubois Gallery. I'd been putting off this call for weeks, my family's voice in my head telling me I wasn't good enough for a place like that. A woman with a crisp, French accent answered. "Isabelle Dubois." "Hello, Ms. Dubois," I said, my voice stronger and more confident than it had been just 5 minutes earlier. "This is Robert Vance, from Vance Crafted. You inquired about some of my work a few weeks ago." "Ah, yes. Mr. Vance. I was hoping to hear from you, she said, and I could hear a genuine smile in her voice. I was beginning to think you were not interested. I'm very interested, I said, looking around at the workshop that was my kingdom. I was just waiting for the right time, and the right time is now. The plan was in motion. The next few days were a blur of activity, but it was a purposeful blur, not a chaotic one. I called Alex. Change of plans for Christmas. How do you, Mark, Chloe, and Ben feel about a trip to the mountains? He didn't even hesitate. We're in. When do we leave? And just like that, my new Christmas was born. Alex found a rental cabin tucked away in the Catskills. A rustic A-frame with a giant stone fireplace and wall-to-wall windows looking out over a snow-covered valley. The 5 of us, my found family, caravanned up there on the 23rd. The difference between this and a Vance family Christmas was like night and day. There was no pretense here, no judgment. Chloe and Mark, who were amazing cooks, took over the kitchen, filling the cabin with the scent of roasting garlic and mulled wine. Ben, a musician, brought his guitar, and the evenings were filled with off-key sing-alongs and easy laughter. Alex, ever the planner, had organized hikes and board games. There were no discussions about careers or stock prices. We talked about life, about dreams, about stupid things we'd done in college. I spent an afternoon showing Chloe some basic woodworking techniques on a piece of fallen birch we found, and her eyes lit up with the same magic I'd felt as a kid. Here, my passion wasn't a disappointment. It was something to be shared. On Christmas Eve, we decided to decorate the tree. There were no perfectly matched, designer ornaments like in my parents' home. Instead, we made our own. We strung popcorn and cranberries, made paper snowflakes, and hung little pine cones we'd collected on our hike. It was imperfect and messy and absolutely beautiful. As I stood back, looking at our lopsided, chaotic, wonderful tree, I felt a warmth spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the roaring fire. This was what family was supposed to feel like. It wasn't about blood or a shared last name. It was about choosing to show up for each other, about creating a space where everyone felt safe enough to be their authentic selves. I thought about the Christmases of my past, the stiff, formal dinners, the forced smiles for photos, the conversations that felt like interrogations, where every question about my business was a thinly veiled criticism. I thought about the constant, draining effort of trying to be someone I wasn't, just to earn a few scraps of approval. Here, in this cozy cabin filled with the sound of laughter and a crackling fire, I didn't have to earn anything. I was just Rob. And that was enough. It was more than enough. That evening, I finally felt the knot of anxiety that had been lodged in my stomach for years begin to unwind. For the first time, I wasn't dreading Christmas dinner. I was looking forward to it because my Christmas dinner was going to be here, with these people eating chili out of mismatched bowls and laughing until our sides hurt. The Vances could have their catered affair and their cold, calculated cruelty. I had found my own feast, and it was a feast of the soul. Even in the warmth of the cabin, the outside world still tried to intrude. My phone, which I'd mostly kept on silent, would occasionally light up with a new message. A text from my sister, Clara. Mom is a wreck. You're being incredibly selfish. You need to call her and fix this. An email from my father, subject line, urgent. The body of the email was just 2 words, call me. And a string of texts from Leo, seriously, Rob? What is this? You're making a scene. Just come home. We can talk this out. Talk this out. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. They didn't want to talk. They wanted to lecture. They didn't want to resolve things. They wanted me to surrender. Each message was a fresh attempt to pull me back into their orbit, to make me the problem, to make their planned ambush my fault for not showing up to be executed. I read them, deleted them, and took another sip of hot chocolate. My friends saw me looking at the phone, their expressions concerned. You okay, man? Alex asked, sitting down next to me by the fire. Yeah, I said, and I was surprised to find that it was the truth. Yeah, I'm good. Just confirming that I made the right decision. I had one final piece of the plan to set in motion. Earlier that day, I had made a call to a white glove delivery service I'd used for clients before. a company that specialized in handling valuable, oversized items. I'd arranged for them to pick up the gifts from a secure storage unit I'd rented near my parents' town. The instructions were very specific. You are to arrive at the Vance residence at precisely 8 p.m. on December 24th, I had told the dispatcher. Not before, not after. The dinner party will be in full swing. You are to bring the items into the main living room, where the Christmas tree is. You will be expected. I had also included a small, sealed envelope with the delivery, addressed to my grandmother, Evelyn. She was the only one I wasn't sure about. She was my father's mother, a formidable woman who lived in London and flew in for Christmas every other year. She was a Vance through and through, but she also had a surprising appreciation for the arts. I was taking a gamble on her. Inside the envelope was a simple, handwritten card. I had spent a long time thinking about what to write. In the end, I kept it short. The words were a time bomb, waiting for the right moment to detonate. Now all I had to do was wait. As my friends started a loud, chaotic game of charades, I sat back and watched them, a genuine smile on my face. The storm was coming for the House of Vance. But I was safe miles away, in the calm, quiet eye of my own making. It was 7:30 p.m. on Christmas Eve. We had just finished dinner. The smell of chili and cornbread hung in the air, and Ben was strumming a soft melody on his guitar. That's when my phone began to buzz. It was my mother. Showtime. I gave Alex a small nod and stepped out onto the cabin's porch, closing the door behind me. The cold air was a shock, sharp and clean. The world was blue and white, silent and still. I took a deep breath and answered the phone. Robert, where are you? Her voice was a whip crack in the peaceful night. Wouldn't you like to know? I replied, my voice calm. I could hear the background noise of the party, the clinking of glasses, the murmur of conversation, the faint sound of a string quartet playing a Christmas carol, the soundtrack to my own execution. I am not playing games with you, she hissed, her voice low and furious. The caterers are here, the guests are arriving. Your grandmother flew all the way from London. The Sterlings are asking where you are. What am I supposed to tell people? I don't know, Mom, I said, letting a beat of silence hang in the air. Maybe tell them the truth for once? That you were planning on ambushing your own son at Christmas dinner? I feel like that would be a real conversation starter. The silence on her end was deafening. I could practically hear the gears in her head grinding, the frantic search for a way to spin this back on me. That is a ridiculous, paranoid accusation, she finally sputtered. We were planning to offer you a wonderful promotion in your life, a real career. We were trying to help you, and this is how you repay us? By embarrassing us in front of our oldest friends. Embarrassing you? I laughed, and the sound was raw and real. You were going to call my life's work macaroni art, in front of a dozen people. You wanted to humiliate me into submission. The only person you should be embarrassed by is yourself. You ungrateful. Save it. I cut her off, my voice turning to steel. My decision is made. Don't wait up for me. And definitely don't hold my seat at the table. I hung up. My hand was shaking, but not from fear. It was from the electrifying surge of finally speaking my truth to her without apology. I walked back inside, and my friends looked at me, their faces a mixture of concern and support. It's done, I said, and a wide grin spread across my face. Phase 1 is complete. Right at that moment, hundreds of miles away, I knew Phase 2 was beginning. I pictured it in my mind. The doorbell of the Grand Vance mansion would be ringing. The caterer would open it to find two men in professional uniforms standing on the porch, a large, wrapped object on a dolly behind them. Delivery for the Vance family, one of them would say, and as they wheeled in my father's magnificent walnut desk, followed by my mother's teak potting bench and the humidor and the bookshelf, a hush would fall over the party. The guests would turn, their eyes wide with curiosity. My father and mother would exchange confused, panicked glances. This was not part of their plan. This was an intrusion, a Trojan horse being wheeled into the center of their perfectly curated evening. And they had no idea what was inside. Of course, I wasn't there to see it happen. But I heard about it later, in glorious, satisfying detail, from the one person I had gambled on, my grandmother Evelyn. She called me the next day, her voice, usually so clipped and British, filled with something I had never heard before, unrestrained glee. "Robert, my dear boy," she began. "That was the most magnificent piece of theater I have seen since I saw Gielgud in Hamlet." According to her, the arrival of the furniture threw the party into a state of utter confusion. My parents, caught completely off guard, tried to direct the delivery men to the garage, but the men were resolute. "Our instructions are to bring them into the main living room, sir." So, one by one, my gifts were unwrapped under the glittering lights of the 10-foot Christmas tree. A wave of murmurs rippled through the guests. These were not lopsided birdhouses. They were stunning pieces of functional art. My father's face, Grandma said, was a thundercloud. My mother looked like she had swallowed a wasp. Their intervention was being upstaged by the very work they had planned to ridicule. And then came the moment of the second twist. Mr. Sterling, a man whose vast fortune came from real estate but whose passion was collecting modern art, walked over to my father's desk. He was a large, imposing man with a booming voice, and he ran his hand over the polished walnut surface with the reverence of a museum curator. "My God, Richard," he bellowed, his voice silencing the entire room. "Where did you find this? The joinery is exquisite. This is the work of a master craftsman. Is he American? I must have his name." My father was speechless. He opened and closed his mouth like a fish, but no words came out. All eyes were on him, waiting for an answer. This was the moment, the ultimate checkmate. And that's when my grandmother made her move. She walked gracefully to the desk, picked up the small, sealed envelope I had addressed to her, and opened it. She pulled out the card and, in her clear, regal voice that carried across the silent room, she began to read. "Dear family," she read, her eyes scanning the faces of my parents. "I made these gifts to show you what I do, to show you who I am. I hope that one day, you'll see their value." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. My mother looked slightly relieved, thinking this was some sort of apology. But my grandmother wasn't finished. She looked directly at my father. "P.S. This is my work, and it is a part of my soul. And for the record, my soul is not for sale. And it most certainly is not available to be stolen for a new brand concept I recently learned about. Good luck with the Vance Lifestyle project." A collective, audible gasp went through the room. Vance Lifestyle, the name of their secret, parasitic plan to absorb my talent into their corporate machine. The truth was out. It wasn't an intervention to save me. It was a hostile takeover. They didn't want to give me a promotion. They wanted to demote me to an anonymous ghost designer for their own profit and glory. It was about greed, and it was about control. My grandmother folded the note and looked at my parents, her expression one of utter contempt. "An intervention, Eleanor?" she said, her voice dripping with ice. "It seems to me the only people in need of an intervention here are you." That, she told me, was when the party truly ended. The guests, sensing the deep, irreparable crack in the family facade, began to make their excuses and leave. The Sterlings left first, but not before Mr. Sterling got my business name, Vance Crafted, from my grandmother. My family was left standing in the wreckage of their own party, surrounded by the beautiful, silent evidence of the son they had so profoundly underestimated. They had planned an ambush, but they hadn't realized I had set a trap of my own. The days following Christmas were strangely quiet. The frantic calls and angry texts stopped. It was the silence of a battlefield after the smoke has cleared. I stayed at the cabin with my friends until the 27th, enjoying the peace, feeling the raw, open wound inside me finally beginning to scab over. The first sign of the fallout came not from my family, but from the outside world. An email popped up on my phone with the subject line, "From the office of Mr. Howard Sterling." My heart skipped a beat. The email was from his personal assistant, requesting a call to discuss a commission for his new penthouse on Park Avenue. Not just one piece, an entire collection. It was the kind of project I had only dreamed of a career-making opportunity that had landed in my lap because my family had tried to destroy me. The irony was so sweet it was almost dizzying. The second sign came from my grandmother. She called to give me the full report, which she did with the strategic precision of a wartime general. "Your father is trying to pretend it never happened," she said. "He's all bluster and denial. Your mother has taken to her bed with a terrible migraine, which is her default response to any social catastrophe. Clara is furious, but at you, of course. And Leo is quiet. Too quiet. I think you might have actually made him think, which for him is a novel experience." "What about you, Grandma?" I asked. "Are you okay?" "Me?" She laughed, a dry, rustling sound. "Oh, I'm marvelous. It was the most entertaining Christmas I've had in 20 years. Robert, you have your great-grandfather's talent, but you have my nerve. It's a formidable combination." Coming from her, it was the highest praise I could imagine. My parents did try to call eventually. Their names would flash on my screen, and I would just watch the phone ring until it went to voicemail. I wasn't ready to talk to them. I didn't know if I ever would be. What was there to say? They hadn't just insulted my work. They had revealed their fundamental lack of respect for me as a person. They hadn't just been cruel. They had been calculating. You don't easily come back from that. Some things, once broken, can't be perfectly glued back together. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their call. I wasn't hoping for their approval. I was busy. I was fielding calls from new clients. I was sketching out ideas for the Sterling Commission. I was talking to Isabelle Dubois about my upcoming gallery show. My world, which had once revolved around their gravitational pull, was now spinning on its own axis. And it was a much, much better world. This was the moment everything changed. The moment I finally took back control of my own life. Thank you so much for sticking with me this far. You're awesome. If you could do me a huge favor and like this video and drop a 1 in the comments below, it lets me know you're still here with me. It really helps more people find this story, and it tells me that sharing these experiences matters to someone. Your support is the biggest reason I can continue to share the rest of this journey. About a week into the new year, I received an email from my father. There was no apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened. It was a multi-page business proposal, complete with financial projections and market analysis, for the Vance lifestyle brand. He had simply rebranded their original hostile takeover plan as a generous partnership offer. "Robert," it began, "after seeing the enthusiastic reaction to your work, I've given it more thought. There is a significant market opportunity here. With my capital and your craft, we could build a billion-dollar brand. I've attached a preliminary structure for a new LLC. We can discuss your salary and title. This is the promotion I wanted to offer you. A real chance to make your hobby profitable." I read the email 3 times. The arrogance was breathtaking. He still didn't get it. He thought the problem was the presentation, not the plan itself. He thought he could buy my forgiveness, buy my talent, with the promise of a higher salary. He thought he could bulldoze his way back into my life with a business plan, as if our relationship was just another asset to be leveraged. The old me would have agonized over how to reply. The old me would have tried to explain my feelings, to make him understand my hurt. But the old me was gone, buried under the snows of that Christmas. The new me knew that you can't reason with a brick wall. You can only decide not to bang your head against it anymore. I took a deep breath and started to type. My reply was short, professional, and ice-cold. "Richard," I wrote, intentionally using his first name for the first time in my life. "Thank you for the proposal. I am not interested. My business, Vance Crafted, is not for sale, nor am I seeking partners at this time. It is and will remain my own. As for our personal relationship, any hope of rebuilding it in the future must be based on a foundation of mutual respect. That is something you have never offered me. Until that changes, there is nothing further for us to discuss. Do not contact me about business matters again." I signed it simply, Robert. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The silence that followed was different. It wasn't the tense, waiting silence of the past. It was the calm, clean silence of a closed door. I had not just set a boundary, I had built a wall. And for the first time, I felt safe behind it. It wasn't a wall to keep them out, necessarily. It was a wall to protect what was inside. My work, my peace, and my newfound self-respect. If they ever wanted to see me again, they would have to find the gate. And the price of admission was something their money couldn't buy. The next 6 months were a whirlwind. It turns out that when you stop pouring all your energy into a black hole of familial disapproval, you have a lot left over for yourself. The commission for Howard Sterling was a dream. He gave me complete creative freedom, and his penthouse was the perfect canvas. The project got a feature in Architectural Digest, and suddenly Vance Crafted wasn't just my small workshop anymore. It was a name people in the design world were starting to know. The show at the Isabelle Dubois Gallery was a sellout on opening night. I stood there in a suit that I actually owned, not one I had borrowed, and watched people with famous names discuss the grain on a piece of cherry wood I had shaped with my own hands. They didn't see a hobbyist. They saw an artist. My phone never stopped ringing. I had to hire 2 apprentices, talented young woodworkers just out of school, to help me keep up with the orders. I moved into a larger workshop space, one with big windows that let in the morning light. It was chaos, it was stressful, and it was the most fun I'd ever had in my life. I was making more money than I had ever thought possible, but the real prize wasn't the number in my bank account. It was the feeling I got every morning when I walked into my workshop. The pride, the purpose, the knowledge that I had built this. Not my father's money, not my family's name. Just me, and my hands, and a stubborn refusal to give up on myself. I even started dating someone. Her name was Sarah, and she was a landscape architect I met through the Sterling project. When I told her my family story, she didn't flinch. She just squeezed my hand and said, "Well, their loss." It was that simple for her. And hearing it from someone else, someone whose opinion I was starting to value immensely, made me realize it could be that simple for me, too. My life was full of good work, good friends, and burgeoning love. I was happy, genuinely, deeply happy. The ghost of my family's expectations still lingered sometimes, a faint shadow in the corner of my mind, but it no longer had any power over me. It was just a reminder of how far I had come. One afternoon, I was cleaning out some old files and I came across my father's email, the one with the business proposal. I reread his words about making my hobby profitable. I looked around my bustling workshop at the 2 talented people I now employed, at the designs for a project that would be featured in a national magazine. I had done more than make it profitable. I had made it my life, and I had done it without him. I dragged the email to the trash and deleted it for good. While my life was blossoming, the House of Vance remained in a deep, cold winter. I had no contact with my parents or my sister. The wall I had built remained standing, and they made no real effort to breach it. My mother, I heard through my grandmother, maintained her narrative that I was an ungrateful and difficult son who had caused a terrible scene. My father, after my final email, had simply erased me from his world. A bad investment he had written off. Clara followed their lead as always. But then, one day, something unexpected happened. I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "It's Leo. Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. Leo, the golden boy, the one who had stood by and let it all happen, who had helped draw up the plans for my corporate prison. My first instinct was to delete the message. But curiosity, and perhaps a flicker of some old, forgotten brotherly bond, made me hesitate. I agreed to meet him at a neutral location, a coffee shop halfway between my workshop and his downtown office. He looked different. The usual confident swagger was gone. He seemed tired, older than his years. He was wearing the requisite expensive suit, but it looked more like a costume than a second skin. He stumbled through the small talk before finally getting to the point. "I saw the article in Architectural Digest," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "The furniture, it was incredible, Rob. Really. Thanks," I said, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "Look," he sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. "I need to apologize. What we did, what we were planning to do at Christmas, it was wrong. I knew it was wrong, and I went along with it anyway. I just stared at him, saying nothing. You have to understand, he continued, his voice strained. All my life, I've done what was expected. Yale, the firm, the right fiancé, the right everything. I'm on a track, a conveyor belt. And then I see you. You fought them. You built something that was yours. You got off the conveyor belt. He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes shocked me. It wasn't pity or condescension. It was envy. I'm jealous of you, Rob, he admitted, the words coming out in a rush. I'm sitting in a corner office with a view of the city, working on a promotion my dad already has mapped out, and I feel like I'm suffocating. You're covered in sawdust in a rented workshop, and you're the freest person I know. I'm sorry for everything. It was the last thing I ever expected to hear from him. My perfect brother, the one who had everything, was trapped in a golden cage of his own. His apology didn't erase years of being treated like a second-class citizen, but it was a start. It was a crack in the wall. He started asking questions then, real questions about my work. He asked about the different types of wood, about the challenges of a design, about what it felt like to create something. For the first time in our lives, we were just two brothers talking, not the golden boy and the black sheep. The relationship didn't magically heal overnight, but it was the beginning of something new, a fragile branch, reaching out across a divide that I once thought was uncrossable. It taught me that sometimes the people you think are the strongest are just the best at hiding their own cages. A few months after my conversation with Leo, I realized there was one last piece of unfinished business. My old room. It was still filled with my books, my old sketches, the first clumsy tools my grandfather had ever given me. They were pieces of my history, and I wanted them back. I couldn't face going there alone, so I called in my real family. Alex, Ben, and Sarah came with me, their presence a quiet, solid shield. I had arranged it through my grandmother so my parents wouldn't be home. Walking into that house again was strange. It was smaller than I remembered, the silence heavy with unspoken words. We went straight upstairs to my old room. As we were packing the last of my things into boxes, I walked out onto the landing and looked down into the living room. And I saw them, my gifts. They weren't hidden away in an attic or sold off. My father's desk stood proudly in his study, its surface organized and clearly in use. My sister's bookshelf was gone, presumably in her apartment. And my mother's potting bench was sitting just inside the French doors that led to the garden, a bag of potting soil resting on its surface. They were using them. In their own silent, stubborn way, it was the only admission of my talent they were capable of giving. They had tried to turn my passion into a weapon against me, but in the end, they had still been unable to deny the beauty and utility of what I had created. I didn't feel anger or triumph. I just felt quiet, a sense of closure. The war was over because I had simply stopped fighting. I had walked off the battlefield and built my own kingdom. As we carried the last box out to the truck, I took one final look at the house I grew up in. It was no longer a source of pain. It was just a building, a place I used to live. My home was somewhere else now. It was in my workshop, it was in the cabin in the mountains with my friends, it was in the smiling eyes of the woman who was waiting for me in the truck. I realized the greatest gift I had ever given myself wasn't a piece of furniture. It was freedom. The freedom to be who I was, without apology or explanation. And that was a masterpiece that no one could ever take away from me. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever had to choose between who you are and who your family wants you to be? I'd love to hear about it. Please, share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.